Hello, everyone. What's up? My name is Sig, and I'm here to share something new that I wanted to try for my YouTube channel, and that is a old school deck tech. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking you through the deck that I've got planned for today. And as I talk through the cards, I'll explain why I've included them, as well as a little tiny bit of finance, not necessarily before all my old school fans throw a fit, not anything about speculation or buying cards out, more about maybe where you can find the cards a little cheaper than the rest of the market. Maybe where I picked up the copies, so you can look and see if they're there, or else maybe what I think might be a good price, or if I think it's going to be changing in the future, or what have you. So more about that perspective rather than like speculation and like the hashtag MTG Finance. But it's just something that kind of merges the two things I'm passionate about with Magic, so I thought I'd give it a try. So today I'm going to be taking you through my Erhnam and Burnham deck. Now, for those unfamiliar with the old school terminology, this is basically a deck designed to ramp into Erhnam Djinn or some big beater creatures, Erhnam Djinn being the namesake one, to try and bash down the opponent quickly, and then uses Burn to either destroy creatures like a block in your path so that your creatures can get through and do damage, or use the Burn to take out those last few points of damage to kill your opponent. And so that's what I'm going to be sharing today. And so without further ado, I'll take you through the deck. So the first cards I have in the deck are a playset of Landware Elves. I've got beta copies here. I got these quite a while ago, so I don't remember what I paid or whatever, but I'm pretty sure you can find heavily played beta cards at Card Kingdom's site. If you manage to catch a restock, they're always out of stock, but they charge significantly less for their good copies, which is like HP, versus the nicer condition. So that's a good way of picking up some cheap cards. I run these instead of Birds of Paradise for a couple of reasons. One is that power of one versus zero is not irrelevant. There are many times where I'll just be swinging in for a couple extra damage with this card to close that gap. I also don't really care too much about flying on the birds. I have other creatures in here that fly that I'll share. So just I think overall, I don't have any issues with color either, and I'll show you the mana base and all that in a minute. So I go with the one power. Also they're cheaper. Beta birds are a fortune. I don't have any of those. All right, the next creatures in the deck are the namesake, the Erhnam Djinn. So this I have the Arabian Nights copies here. I got these a while ago as well. These are quite expensive now. I know that Card Kingdom has been steadily increasing their buy list on this card over the last few weeks. It's up to like 195 now for near mint. My copies aren't near mint, but I I still think that they are worth a lot more than you would think, what you would expect. Um, I actually think that the ABU games at one point had not as obnoxiously overpriced number on the Erhnam Djinn. And so what that means is that if you have trade credit, you can get singles trade credit. You might be able to pick up a heavily played one for a little cheaper than if you were to just buy it from TCG Player or whatever. I think that's where I got my last copy. So that's the Erhnam Djinn. Another aggressive cheap creature in the deck that I play is Kurdape. So it's just a 1/1, but then if you've got a forest in play, it's a 2/3. So it's basically a 1 mana 2/3. These were actually good enough to be played in Legacy at one point in time, back in the day when Zoo was a popular deck, and I've stuck to keeping these in there. I can very often get these to swing for 2 on turn 2, and they're pretty nice as well. And they're inexpensive. Even the Arabian Nights ones are only worth a few bucks each, so it's a good way to get some black border cards into your deck. To continue with the aggressive trend, I've got 3 Juggernauts. These I just like as efficient, cheap beaters. They have to attack every turn. I'm attacking pretty much every turn I can anyway. 5 power is tough to deal with. Now, granted, this does die to lightning bolt, so that's something you have to keep in mind with the 3 toughness. But I mean, this can punch through and trade with the Juzan Djinn or an array of other creatures. So they're pretty handy to have in the deck. Now I have a couple of more fun cards that I've got in here. I could have other creatures in here, more efficient attackers or whatever, but I've gone with a little bit more of a fun route because that's what I like to do with old school. So I've got 2 beta Rock of Courages here, and I like these because they fly. They're 3/3 in the air. Unfortunately, they don't tango well with Serendib Efreet, which is probably one of the tougher cards for this deck to deal with. But I do like that they've a pretty big body to go in the air, and 4 mana for a 3/3 flyer back in the day was not a bad exchange. These are actually rare. They're not the most expensive rares. I find that if I want to pick up cheaper rares from beta or alpha, I tend to watch ABU Games' eBay site or eBay page because they tend to list auctions where they basically have a pretty high starting price. No one bids on the card, and when the auction ends after 5 days, they relist it a day or two later at a slightly lower price. They drop it by about 10% every time. And so you watch and wait, and then eventually the price comes down low enough, and then you place your bid. And usually they only get one or two bids on some cards like these. So that's what I would recommend trying to do if you want to pick up a couple of cheap copies of this card. I also have one other flyer in here, the Granite Gargoyle. Now, this one is my only alpha rare. I think it's pretty cool. I keep it just to be a member of the 1100 Club. For those who might be familiar, it's just because that's how many copies of every alpha rare were printed. So I like having the one. I think I got it pretty inexpensively, and so I was like, okay, I'll just sell the beta one I had as like an inexpensive way to upgrade. I like this because it's got the pump ability for its toughness. So it's only a 2/2 flyer, but for 3 mana, that's not a terrible exchange rate. Also, this is a rare. But this can tango with Serendib Efreet. Just it costs a bunch of mana, but it's one way of holding them back long enough, hopefully, that maybe the Serendib Efreet does the killing for you from your opponent. So I like having one in here just for kicks. I always have a couple of pet cards in any old school deck I run, at least one, usually a couple. So the next 3 cards are all pet cards for me. So I've got a Rock Hydra, just a really fun old school beta card, and then I've got a Force of Nature. I picked this up a long, long time ago. I've always wanted to have a copy. I remember being as a kid. This was always one of those chase cards that just 8/8 trample. Oh my gosh, what could easily destroy a scaled worm or a craw worm or anything else you can throw its way. So the upkeep is really steep, and if your opponent destroys your lands and you can't pay the upkeep, you lose very quickly. But I only run one. It's for fun. Why not? Sometimes it can just get the job done pretty quickly. And then lastly, I run a single copy of Crawworm. I have an alpha copy I got a while ago. Alpha Crawworms are surprisingly not cheap. So you would expect an alpha common to be worth maybe $5-10, but this is one of the pricier ones. I think a lot of people have the same nostalgia I have for this card. So the demand is actually pretty steady there. And again, 6 mana for a 6/4 back in the day. That wasn't a terrible exchange rate. It doesn't die to lightning bolt. Trades with the biggest creatures that most opponents throw at you. So it's good to have one for just for fun, for nostalgia. So that's the end of the creatures. Now I'll talk a little bit about the spells. We'll start off with the burn, since that's the Burnham half of Erhnam and Burnham. And I start off with a playset of lightning bolts. I got these copies. These are beta. I got these from Star City Games. They ran a sale. They run sales all the time. I mean, check their website like every Monday. They have something new. But at one point, they were like discounting some heavily played cards, and they had these. They were like $83 each or something like that. Very affordable. And I was looking for an opportunity to upgrade, and I couldn't pass up. Now, when Star City Games says HP, in the past, I used to expect like, okay, HP Star City means like MP elsewhere, right? That's not necessarily the case anymore. I've noticed some of these cards are pretty beat up. I don't know if you can get a good look in the camera. Maybe not, but like this is one of them here. It's pretty beat up. No creases, which is nice. But I have received inked cards from Star City lately that were listed as HP, and I think technically that follows their policy. So I couldn't really do anything about it. But just be careful buying HP from Star City. Great way of getting cheap sleeve payable cards when they do have them in stock, but also can be a little bit risky if you don't want inking or something like that on your card. There's no guarantee that you won't get that. I don't plan on selling these anytime soon. They're in the deck, so I don't care. Because I want to have lightning bolts 5 and 6, I play 2 copies of Chain Lightning. I used to play a couple more, but I think that six 3 damage spells is effectively enough. I've got 2 fireballs here. I picked these up from Beta. Fireball's another one of those popular old school cards where you can't really find black bordered alpha beta for super cheap. I think the alphas are particularly expensive. I don't remember, $30-40 or whatever. Beta's a little bit cheaper. That's what I've got here, and they still look nice. And they're great finishers, or they can take out a couple creatures in a pinch. One last finisher I have in the deck is Hurricane. I would play Beta Earthquake instead, but those are a lot more expensive. Those are a couple $100 for HP, and they go up from there, whereas this is just a few bucks. So even though I have some flyers, I figure this is a good finisher because it does damage to players just like Earthquake does, and I can also use it to take out opponents' flying creatures, the Serendib Freets I told you about before. Yes, they do blow up my own flying creatures as well. The idea is not to use this as like a spot removal spell. It's really just to use this to end the game. Now onto the some other more fun cards. I wanted to have some mana acceleration, mana rock, so I've got a Soul Ring here, unlimited Soul Rings. I think you can get good copies from Card Kingdom when they have them in stock for a pretty reasonable price. So that's what I'd recommend. If you have store credit, it's even better. Then I also have an unlimited Mana Crypt here. Another 3 mana for 1, kind of accelerant, helps pay for bigger fireballs and ramp out some of my creatures. And so it's good to have one of these. Then I have like 2 Desert Twisters as just like catch-all removal. These are not rare. They're not on the reserve list, but they're still like 10, 12 bucks or whatever from Arabian Nights. So they're not cheap if you have any lying around. Make sure you take good care of them. They're expensive at 6 mana, but they do kind of catch all. They destroy anything, so they're good to have. I have 1 copy of Regrowth. I think this card used to be like restricted or something. I mean, this card used to be busted. So it's nice to have one, basically rebuy any card from your graveyard. I got this from Card Kingdom also. It was listed as good. Again, when you can catch a restock of a good copy from Card Kingdom of any alpha, beta, or unlimited card, it's usually a pretty good price and a good pickup with store credit. So that's how I got this one. I've got 1 copy of Sylvan Library from Legends here. This is my only card draw engine here. I thought about running Jam to Tomes because they're just a more reliable way of drawing cards. But I find that a lot of decks play artifact removal, whereas enchantment removal maybe is a little less popular. I guess like there's disenchant, right? But if you're playing red, you have shatter, but you don't have an easy way of destroying the enchantment. So that's one thing. I also like that this gives you some sifting ability and it only costs 2 mana. Jam to Tome costs 4 to cast and 4 to activate. And my deck, it's kind of mana hungry, so I'd rather just pay a few extra life to get an extra card if I want to do it that way. And again, like I like that. You can sift for cards easily. I've got 1 copy of Wheel of Fortune. At one point, I had a beta copy, but I decided to sell it so that I can fund some other purchases. And so I picked up this foreign black border copy. I think this one's French. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So anyway, I got this from ABU Games. At one point, they didn't adjust pricing on their foreign black border and foreign white border Wheel of Fortunes. You know, like the card had spiked, and revised copies sold out, and unlimited copies were expensive, and forget about alpha and beta. But for some reason, like when you search on ABU Games, it defaults to filtering to English. And so when you click the X on that so that you see the foreign cards, sometimes you get lucky and you get a foreign black border for a reasonable price. Again, I say reasonable because you use store credit. You don't use cash to buy from ABU Games if you want to be smart with your dollar. So store credit, that's how I got this card. I do have the 1 must include Chaos Orb in the deck. I got my Chaos Orbs a while ago, so they were not nearly as expensive as they are now. But these are nice to keep in. Any old school deck really can play 1, and it's like one of the most iconic cards in the format. So I think that's why it's so expensive. But I got the 1 in there. Now I tend to play with lightly powered decks. I don't play like all Power 9 in my old school decks. I don't have enough copies of the Power 9 to do that. And I also think that it's a little bit like too overpowered. I'm not playing to like cutthroat win tournaments or whatever. I'm just playing to have fun. So in this deck, because it's red and green, I do have like a single copy of Mox Emerald and Mox Ruby in the deck. So these help ramp out the mana, and they're on color, so it's nice, and that's all I use for power in this deck. Onto the mana base, I've got 1 copy of Strip Mine. This is going to be controversial. I know some people advocate for 4 copies of Strip Mine. I do have another deck that does run 4 copies of Strip Mine. I'll talk about that deck another time if there's enough interest in this one. But in this deck, just the 1. Again, I also don't like destroying all my own lands because I, again, have a pretty mana-intensive deck, especially with like Force of Nature and Fireball and stuff. So I need the mana. I don't want to be sacrificing a ton of lands. I've got the 4 Taigas, because that's a red-green dex, and also Taiga with Curt Ape makes a 2/3 creature on turn 1, which is kind of nice. These are unlimited. I got these a long time ago. I know that they're a lot more expensive now. It's pretty crazy. I find that unlimited duels are more attractive, and sometimes only marginally more expensive than revised. It depends on the dual land. I don't remember what the difference is for Taiga, but I'm glad that I've got the unlimited copies. Just I like the color and the vibrancy of them more than revised. So that's what I use in my deck. To help with mana fixing, I have 2 copies of City of Brass. I have like the most beat up copies I could find because these things are super expensive. Card Kingdom's buy list for near mint is like $320 now. It's insane. So that means if you've got a heavily played copy, you can still buy list it for like 200 and whatever, what is 70% of 320, 224 or something. And then you get 30% credit bonus on top of that. You're doing pretty well. I got one of these I know from ABU Games, also with store credit. They restocked an HP copy, and it was in the low 200s. I jumped on it with store credit. I think they've increased the price a little bit since then, but still, if you can catch a restock of a played or heavily played Arabian Night City of Brass from ABU Games, that's a great way of getting out of store credit into something of value. Rounding out the mana base, I've got, what is this, 5 mountains. I got these beta duels a while ago, and then or beta basics a while ago, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 beta forests. They are not all matching art because I wasn't OCD about it, and I needed to get these as inexpensively as I could. So this is the route I went. And so I think I got some of these from, or maybe it was the islands. I got some beta basics from LSV or something like that. I think. I remember at one point we were trading in old school cards, and that was pretty cool. But anyway, that rounds out the deck. I hope you enjoyed the deck tech here. If you like this and you want more, please put a comment in here. I'm trying to see if I can fill out a little bit of a YouTube channel just to see what interest there is. I've got some free time over Christmas break, so why not? If it fizzles, it fizzles, but I figure I'll give it a try. If you like it, please comment and please subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of this stuff. I have got a couple other old school decks I'd be happy to take you through. All right. Thanks for watching. Take care.